Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Stone by Stone. I am not Andrew Swanson. I am Bardia Kimiavi, current Edgewater Castle FC player and recent addition to the ownership group. Also a former Northwestern Wildcat, which has me very thrilled to welcome our guest for this week, current Wildcat men's soccer head coach and longtime U.S. Youth National Team coach, Russell Payne. Coach, glad you're here.
Great to be here, man. Thanks for having me, Bardia.
Of course. So can you give the listeners a little bit of a background of your experience in the game, starting as a player and eventually progressing to a coach?
Yeah. I mean, the short and sweet of it is, I grew up in Columbia, Maryland. Played college soccer at the University of Maryland, and was fortunate enough to go on and play after school for a bit. I played for about 9 years. I bounced around Major League Soccer, a little bit in USL, and then made my way over to Europe and played about five and a half years in Europe as well. And I was thinking about going to med school back in the day. And when I found myself, playing soccer in Europe, I realized that I was probably not going to further my education from a traditional academic standpoint. I was going to stay in the game.
Mm-hmm.
So when I finished up playing, I was able to start coaching. My former coach at the University of Maryland, Sasha Ostrowski, offered me an opportunity to be an assistant with him. Jumped in head first into a top program in the country, won a couple national championships as a coach, and then got the head coaching job at Army West Point. Was there for 10 years, and was fortunate to be able to come grace the shores of Evanston and step in with you in 2021 and become a Wildcat and haven't looked back ever since. During my time at Maryland is when I became a youth national team assistant coach, and since then, I've been fortunate enough to work with every age group in U.S. soccer. I think I'm the only coach right now current coach who's done that, from the 14s all the way to the men's senior national team. Gold Cups, Copa America, U20 World Cups, and recently the Olympics in 2024. And I just got off a plane today from Serbia with the U21s. So it's been a fun ride.
Yes, sir. No, we appreciate that quick turnaround of you joining us today. And hey, long story short, this guy knows a thing or two about the game. And so given that lifelong experience that you have, starting as a fan, progressing into an elite and eventually professional player, and now being, an elite level coach for several decades now, how has that progression kind of changed or shaped the way that you view the game?
Yeah, I mean, it's still my view of the game is still being shaped and evolving, because the game always has things that are changing or becoming trends, or new ways of learning and looking at situations. But I came into the game as most youth players do, just had a love for it at an early age, and had an appetite for learning like what the game was about. And I mean, I didn't come from a soccer playing household, but my parents introduced me to the sport, and my parents had traveled the world quite a bit when we were young, and so I kind of had a global view of soccer's sort of place in the world, which was really cool to get that at a young age. But I got to tell you, if you would ask me 30 years ago or more, about would I have had these experiences now, I would have said absolutely not. I would have no idea that this was possible. So what it's taught me is that there are so many possibilities that that are available to us all, in different professions. But resilience and perseverance and all those principles they're just tried and true. And so I've been able to be shaped by my college coach at Maryland. I've been shaped by the national team coaches I've worked with, by the players especially. Every environment just gives you more, and it's really up to you to take from that environment and sort of put those pieces together to create that viewpoint that allows you to hopefully affect others and affect the game.
100%. Yeah, phenomenal resume with a lot of stops along the way. I want to start in the late 90s. Obviously
Sure.
the pathway to becoming a pro in the United States looked a lot different. We're talking about the USISL, correct?
That's
With,
right. Yeah.
the New Orleans, Riverboat Gamblers, the Maryland Mania, some teams that I hadn't even heard of before, preparing
Sure.
for this. And so what did that teach you about, the early grind of American professional soccer in those days?
First of all, one of the first things I learned coming out of college and jumping into the pro game, because when I first came out of Maryland, I was not drafted initially, but I got invited to training camp with FC Dallas, and FC Dallas was working out of a trailer, and I don't even remember the park that we were using back in the day. Playing on the Cotton Bowl, working out of out of trailers and modulars, and it wasn't glamorous. And then didn't make that team. Ended up with the New Orleans Riverboat Gamblers as they were called in the USISL. And I just kept thinking, like, on every stop that I hit, I was like, man, college was so much better. Like the facilities in college were better. The amount of equipment we got, just all around, just kind of a more professional setup. But it gave me perspective. Hey, this is what it's all about. Now you gotta get out there and grind. It's not gonna be handed to you from an environment standpoint. You have to create it for yourself. But kind of putting that aside, my biggest takeaways from those early days, and how that led me to, a career in coaching or just, opportunities down the line were just, the value of being a great teammate. Like I was a hard worker. I wasn't overly talented as a goalkeeper. I thought I was, good enough to be on those rosters and become a starter on some. But I try to leave a good impression on the environment, try to leave a good impression on my teammates and the coaches. And those are the people that I've found myself working with, now, as I progress through the game, and it allowed me to stay in it.
For sure. Yeah, you talk about, the resilience and the perseverance. Obviously, being a goalkeeper
Sure.
Is a very isolated position at times. A lot of pressure. When you make a mistake, everybody knows. What are some, mental traits that you had to develop along your path to help you become more and more successful at those levels?
It's interesting you asked that question because it makes me actually think about my time with the national team, especially in some of the major tournaments. And when you're down on the field and you're in the moment with the team, on the sidelines, coaching, fulfilling your roles, you don't really hear the crowd. You don't really see the crowd. You're not really taking in what's going on around you. You're really just taking in the moment, and the players you're trying to affect, and your communication with your coaching staff, the communication with the players, and you're just locked in, and you're hyper focused there. And it was the same being in goal, man. Like when you're in goal, you're scanning, you're in every play, you're watching the movement of the players on the ball, off the ball. You're talking to the guys in front of you, and a good play happens, great, and you got to move on quick. A bad play happens, great, you got to move on quick. Goalkeepers and strikers have a similarity in terms of you have to have a short memory, right? With goalkeepers, though, we have to be able to quickly make those adjustments because we'll see that situation again. But you do have to be able to forget it. You have to be able to file it, and forget it and just move on. And I think, that helped me. That part of goalkeeping really helped me, I think, within coaching.
Absolutely. And we talked about that stint in the MLS a little bit, USISL as well. When you moved to Europe, some stints in Germany, in Ireland, you mentioned that global view that you had of the game kind of early on. Was there any big cultural shock for you making that switch overseas?
Not as much as you would think. I mean, but between my first introduction to professional soccer and me going overseas, a good amount of time passed actually. I found myself with a few other Major League Soccer clubs. When I was in school, when I was at the University of Maryland, I actually went over to England for about 2.5 weeks and trained with a club called Plymouth Argyle, which I think first or second division nowadays. And that experience, being in that locker room, that was kind of the old school English experience where the younger players, reserves, cleaned the boots of the older players, and you really had to pay your dues and really had to go through that stepping stone, progression. The head coach is a guy named Neil Warnock. He's been a legendary coach in England for years. That was my first introduction to learning what a locker room was really like at the professional level, and sort of how to navigate conversations, how to show up every day and sort of, keep your chest up and your chin up, being able to deal with banter and know when somebody's really trying to get at you and when somebody's having fun with you and how to take those kind of things, and life off the field. I kind of got all that in that experience. It was really cool. And it told me that this is where I want to be. I want to do this. And that was the summer, that was the summer that Major League Soccer had just started earlier that spring. So that summer I was like, I got to join this league. It was brand new. It had only been around for about 4 or 5 months. And I knew that was the progression I wanted to take. So by the time I made my way back to Europe, I think it was about probably 3 years later, I got my degree So the pressure was off from that standpoint. Like I was
Mm-hmm.
only looking forward. I wasn't trying to, still figure that piece out. I'd been in Europe before, and I was like, okay, I think I can figure this out. And so I got over there. My first stop was I was in the Netherlands. I was there for a year with a club called AZ as a reserve goalkeeper. I learned the language in the locker room, watching TV, taking. I would write. I would take notes, like mental notes. Sometimes I have my little pad with me in my backpack, and I'd write down the words I heard the most. And I'd go home at night and be like, and look them up. Like, okay, the guys are saying this all the time. Like, what does this mean? And things like that. And I'd watch TV with subtitles. And you just got to pick it up. You got to put the effort in.
Mm-hmm.
But I was mature enough to like know when to talk and when to shut up,
Mm-hmm.
and I was mature enough to develop relationships with the guys and kind of read the room a little bit. I think that's important, and I think that's something that unfortunately a lot of the younger guys don't get a chance to kind of go through that up and down and that learning moment with the level of maturity. Sometimes when you have to do it really early, it can kind of put you in a situation where it might affect your football a little more than it would.
Mm-hmm.
For me, like the locker room didn't really affect my football. Like I could navigate that and I could just go out and focus. And then time off the field, was easier to manage too. But my first stint in Europe really wasn't a culture shock. The biggest culture shock is just, like figuring out how to make plays every day, man, at a level that's just, way above where you were previously.
And so how about tactically? When we talk about the cultural sense, how about the tactical sense? Obviously, a lot of people consider it a big shift going from, the MLS to Europe, especially at that time when the league was still up and coming. Did you face any challenges there? How did you overcome that?
I learned a ton. There were things I had no idea were part of, tactical layouts of teams, like especially in the Dutch league. Super, super sharp things that they did in that league that, as a goalkeeper, I hadn't been really keyed into. There was not a lot of emphasis on defending.
Mm-hmm.
So most of it was like, how can you help this team attack as a goalkeeper? How can you help set your team up with good passes and all those kind of things? And what do you expect to do as a keeper?
Total
and we did
football, right?
Yeah, and we did a lot with our feet, a lot more than I'd ever done. But also, listen, man, really, really sharp and technical based goalkeeping. It was all inclusive. So, every day was like my head was almost exploding every day. It's how much I was taking in and learning. But it definitely helped shape me.
Yeah, based on the way you hopped into our training session, I think so the technique is still there. So
I don't know about that. I appreciate it, man.
So we'll fast forward to 2002.
Yep.
You're in Ireland.
Yep.
You win the Irish Premier League Goalkeeper of the Year.
Okay.
What about that year was so special for you?
It's like that year. That year was like it's like the human side of just feeling like you belong and people accept you and want you there and like value you. It all kind of all came together. Like I became a starting goalkeeper there. I was well received by the team, by my teammates. I was well received by the community. The crowd got behind me, and I just felt like my game blossomed. It was like I finally, that was the one moment I really felt like just valued. Like I felt like people wanted me there, and people like saw like something in me that they appreciated, and it elevated my game. And I remember like the early days. I would go train at DC United all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And
Shout out DMV.
Yeah, that's it. And DC United's still like the hometown club and all that. And I played for DC United in a couple little friendly games and cup match, and I was on extended call up with them for years. But I always remember feeling like, man, I wish this club valued me. Like I wish this club saw like some value in me. I was just kind of another guy that was there as a goalkeeper, third or fourth string guy all the time and this and that. And I was like, I wonder what that would feel like if this club, kind of put his arms around me. Like, what would I need to do? How good can I be to show them that, like, I could deserve that. And so when I got to Ireland, I got that, and it was really, really, it was the best experience I've ever had playing. And we won some games. I had some performances that people appreciated, and the rest is what you talked about.
Absolutely. And back in those days in the MLS, DC United was near the top.
Oh, DC United was unbelievable.
Yeah, I'm
like,
sure it felt good to make that jump to Europe.
Yeah,
and
I couldn't get a sniff, man.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I appreciate that question. That was a really special time. I really enjoyed it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Transitioning over to your current role, obviously it's no secret that the landscape of college athletics is changing, evolving year after year. Obviously with the implementation of NIL, but also on the soccer side with roster limitations, with substitution rules. How has that changed the way that you have to adapt as a coach? Whether it's the way that you approach each season, the way that you recruit players, or just in your overall day to day.
Yeah, so that's a great question, Barty. The approach to coaching in the modern like college game in terms of all the different rule changes, the earth's been shifting underneath us for years. In the last 3 or 4 years, has it had the largest shifts. The shift has not really happened inside the white lines in terms of like the small rule changes, substitution rules changes, things like that. A lot of us have always kind of coached in that way. We just adapted to subbing guys in and out as you would, but most of the time, you want to keep players in the field. You want them to learn how to cope with moments and manage the game. And sometimes the on and off substitution patterns didn't always allow you to do that, and it wasn't always something that we thought was good for the game. So it was about time the substitution rule changed. But the other parts that really shifted the ground underneath us, the roster limitation. Changes things. Obviously, NIL now kind of puts us into that same realm with some of the other major sports in this country, where now money starts to drive a lot of those relationships. It's unfortunate because it's become more of a transactional landscape with players, and you got to do your best as a coach to make it not transactional, to show people that you care about them and that you're going to invest in them, in their day-to-day well-being and their life beyond the sport. Like that's not going to change. Just how well you do that is what's going to make a difference in the culture of your team. But the big pieces that we're talking about that are still on their way, I believe, are the full academic year model that we've been working on for years.
21st century.
21st
I remember
century
there was
model,
conversations we had back when I was in school.
So it's back on the table again.
Yeah.
I happen to be on the Division I oversight committee, so that's another big shift. So now every sport has their own oversight committee. So it used to be if you wanted a rule change, you had to send that rule change through a legislative process that went through committees that may not even have representation of your sport, right? Well, now you have a Division I men's soccer committee and a Division I women's soccer committee and so forth. And so now we can make proposals, from our membership and bring them forward and then send those to our ADs and presidents and get those things adopted. So we've got some great momentum right now for the academic year model.
Is that the new name now? I remember it was the 21st century model.
21st century model, academic year model, split season.
Yeah.
Either way, it's we're looking at a spring championship. We're looking at a full year of soccer with a break. Obviously over the holidays, and there's some other pieces that are potentially getting baked in with. There could be some regionalization too. Your season, your schedule, and some other things, and tiering, which are all positive things, that are going to bring us forward. The way we've always looked at this is we have some of the best resources. We've had excellent coaching, and we have the opportunity to be just like, college basketball is to the NBA and college football is to the NFL, right? And providing the talent, providing the opportunity, and potentially monetizing, the product so that, we're on TV more and all those things are happening.
Absolutely. So, I think from a development standpoint too, people don't realize how brutal that college soccer schedule is, especially in the fall time. There's so little time to actually train and develop, given that, Tuesday you're playing a game, Wednesday you're recovering, Thursday you're prepping for Friday's game, and so it's tough. I think that 21st century model would certainly help the development here.
It'll help. What's interesting about it, we used to talk about it in terms of we thought we were so different because we played so many games in such a short period of time. Well, we are still very different, playing a lot of games in a short period of time. However, if you look at the modern game at the highest level, these players who are playing in the top leagues around the world are also playing in, Champions League or UEFA, Europa League, things like that, conference leagues. And then they have their cup matches and they have their league cups as well. MLS has it too, right? So we have a very similar cadence now to all the pro teams. Unfortunately, ours is just so condensed that, after 3 months, ours is over. They've got the tough job of doing it for 9 months, right? And their competitions start to fall off as as you get eliminated, you have fewer and fewer games. But they are really grinding, and they're playing way more games than they need to play.
Absolutely.
right? So now we have a chance to take our 3-month condensed season and now spread it out to where our players now aren't missing, with one injury, missing half the season.
Yeah.
This year we had a bunch of setbacks that really hurt us, a crucial period of the season. But you're talking about guys, tweaking a knee and being out for 4 weeks.
Yeah. I remember those days.
Yeah,
the quad strains
absolutely.
did not treat us well in the middle of that Big Ten gauntlet.
No.
But
Well, no. So for playing for me, you rarely had soft tissue injuries, right? Because we had
that's
our
true.
stuff together.
Yeah. I got into work with that prehab in
There
the
you
training
go.
room for
There
sure.
you go.
But yeah, we talked about the 21st century model. You kind of touched on, the regionalization. The word on the street is they're trying to implement that promotion relegation in college soccer. What are your thoughts on that?
So there are a lot of different proposals and ideas that, like I said, could possibly get baked into the full academic year model and with the spring championship. One of the ideas thrown out was like promotion and relegation. And what we're talking about is really like, would there be tiers of, Division I men's soccer teams? And would you be in a certain tier and could you move up or down within those tiers? Once you start to get into that framework, you're talking about a lot of different moving pieces that would have to be worked out before we go there. And you have to ask yourself, what's the value of that, right? What's the value of promotion relegation at the college level? Promotion relegation is a pro level, immediate value. You get the splash to cash for going up. You get a parachute maybe coming down.
Every game matters.
But every game matters already to us.
Right.
You don't really need promotion relegation for a game to matter. Now, do you want to reward teams that are in maybe in a tier 2, so to speak, for how well they do to get into a tier 1? Well, it depends on what the benefit of being in tier 1 is and what the benefit of being tier 2 is. Because if you're all both working towards that NCAA tournament championship or tournament bid, and there's pathways to it, then you have to figure out then what's the purpose of the tiering and how is it put together. And listen, that I think it just has a lot of layers to it that we're still all trying to figure out. But out of the main components that were proposed already, we've touched on those as far as full year, spring championship, potentially regionalizing, the leagues and the competitions around the country. And then there's a whole lot of things you can bake in there, right? And U.S. soccer's involvement is so, so important because you're talking about underwriting some things that could really put us on the map for this.
Absolutely. Yeah, and so we talked about, that transition from, Army to Northwestern, about a decade or so that you spent at Army.
Yeah.
What is it that makes, Northwestern so special as a school, as a program? What have you noticed so far about your time in Evanston?
Yeah, I mean, I've been really fortunate, Bardia, having been at Army and at Northwestern. I've been at 2 locations, 2 institutions that put people first, and I was drawn to Army at the time because that's the kind of coaching experience I wanted to have, and I wanted to be in a community that put the individual, and the development of that individual, at the top of the list. And Northwestern, as I learned about Northwestern as a school and I learned about the athletic department and the relationships with the coaches and how the student athletes are treated, I said this is a similar mission type of place, right? In terms of developing, high character young people to go out and change the world and do great things, and obviously the mission at Army, is defined a little bit differently, but you're still talking about building, individuals to lead, to exhibit, demonstrate the highest caliber of character in order for others to be able to be safe, secure, achieve greatness, all those things, So that drew me to Northwestern, right? And a small athletic department with, a private school where there's a lot more controllables was really cool. Being in that environment. The coaching staffs, the coaches are very tight and look after each other. The student athletes know each other. One of the first things you experience with me and one of the first things that our guys experience every summer when they come in is, we acknowledge people in the hallway. We look people in the eye. We shake hands. Hold the door for people. You represent more than just yourself. And that's appreciated and it's respected and it's valued at Northwestern. And athletic excellence is, extremely, extremely important. Winning championships is extremely important. But doing it with high character and doing it with values, right? And doing it with a sense of community is what makes us different, And as we say excellence, that's our core value, excellence. That's all doing all things at the highest level possible, right?
The end never comes off,
It
as
never
they
comes
say.
off, my man.
So we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back after this short message.
Acorns makes it easy to start investing for you, your kids, and your retirement. Now, they want to make it easy to attend Edgewater Castle FC matches. Get 2026 season tickets when you sign up and start investing today at acorns.com/ECFC. Investment advisory products and services offered by Acorns Advisors, LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor.
Eight years ago, we were just an idea, a distant dream for togetherness, joy, and triumph. We did not inherit a dynasty. We did not arrive with airdropped riches and fanfare. We began with a foundation of belief and a shared commitment to build something. Something authentic, something necessary. We're building this club the only way we know how. Stone by stone, brick by brick, goal after goal after goal. Now the foundation is set. The structure's sound. We can hear the music of the side streets and the rhythm of Lake Michigan as we give our community more Chicago to root for. Which is why we're proud to announce, for the 2026 season, Edgewater Castle Football Club officially enters the national stage, USL League 2 and USLW League. We built together. Now we climb together. Onward and upward, always.
Welcome back, folks. Still Bardia Kimiavi here. Coach Payne hasn't left us just yet. So I want to talk a little bit about the soccer scene here in Chicago. Obviously, one of the biggest cities in the country. Very rich, sports culture.
Absolutely.
But when most people think about Chicago sports, they think about, MJ and Scotty P, monsters of the Midway, that dominant Bears defense, long losing streaks. Sorry, Chicago fans. But long story short, there's not as much buzz, as most people would think around soccer when you first think of the sport or Chicago sports. And so, how would you describe, the soccer scene here in Chicago, and how would you compare it to other cities that you've lived or played in?
Oh man, the soccer scene here in Chicago is dope. It's amazing. It's very rich. The Fire games can be really well attended, especially when they're at Soldier. I've been at a ton of those every season. Take my kids there. I've taken the team there. But even more than that, man, the community gets out. The community plays. Mm-hmm. Everywhere you look, there's pickup games going on. You go down to the Fire pitch in Addison. There's so much soccer in this metropolitan area and the suburbs. I mean, it's just I always laugh when I feel like the in different cities and different places around the country, for like, when is soccer gonna take off? And I feel it's taken off. It's taken off. We have a great following. We have all the things that need to go into a culture and a community and all those things. Just what are we missing? We need to win. Like, mm-hmm. We need to have some signature moments in a World Cup. We need to have a few more things like that happen. But the soccer community in Chicago, for me, is like, it's like rewarding. It's refreshing. It's exciting. I just want to be able to tap more into it. I think people don't realize like how accessible like the soccer scene is at Northwestern. Mm-hmm. Like if you come out to Northwestern, yourself, you come out on like a random weeknight at 7 p.m.
The Cats are there.
That field is full of students. Playing club, playing intramurals, you name it. I mean, they're playing. They're out there. Like our field gets used from 6 p.m. to 11 p.m. more than probably any other facility on that campus. And it'd be interesting it'd be interesting to check, the rest of the Chicagoland area, and to see if they knew like how rich the soccer scene is at Northwestern. Mm-hmm. But it's a great area, man. It's a great area for soccer. Like, the sports bars, the soccer bars in the city, the everywhere you look, people are wearing jerseys of all different sports. I mean, flying in today, I saw people wearing like St. Louis FC jerseys and everything else at O'Hare. Like, I don't feel like I don't feel anything but love for soccer in this city for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I've spent some time. Obviously, I'm north of Northwestern, on the west side, south side, down in the Loop.
Yeah.
One thing remains constant. It's that passion for the game. And in case you hadn't heard, the World Cup will be coming here to the States in the summer of 2026. Now, the last World Cup that was hosted here was a little before my time, back in 1994. But as you mentioned,
Opening
the
game was
sport-
held here, wasn't
yeah,
it?
Yeah,
I
the
remember
sport
that.
has grown tremendously, in this country since then. And so, what impact do you expect that this upcoming World Cup to have on all levels of the sport, from the grassroots game up to the professional ranks?
The World Cup momentum, like we always talk about, is so real. I mean, when the World Cup happened back in '94, we didn't have the Pro League yet, we didn't have MLS yet, so that was sort of the catalyst. That was a springboard to launching everything. So people around the world started realizing, that there was an appetite for soccer in this country. So I don't think you were trying to prove that anymore. Like I said, I think soccer is here. It's arrived. It's established, and it's just going to continue to grow.
Whether you like it or not, it's here.
That is what it is, man. It is what it is. But this World Cup, I think it's just going to continue to intensify, the belief in the community here, the soccer community here, that like the world is watching, right? And the product is legitimate, and we're going to keep pushing it. And it's going to strengthen the attractiveness of more of the world's players wanting to come play in the U.S. There was, MLS will always have players that are older and maybe in the second half of their careers, but you've seen now like a lot of guys on the front of their careers and the middle of their careers are coming over. So you're always going to have that sort of balance to Major League Soccer. But the World Cup is just going to continue to strengthen those kind of things. And I also think like the commercial value of the World Cup is going to start to seep into places like, like the college scene, like these major universities, especially the ones down south, are going to be like, wait a second, man, we're leaving money on the table here.
Absolutely.
Like
all those SEC schools.
Yeah, I mean, you saw what happened. Like, I think it was it this last year, Liverpool hosted, or University of South Carolina hosted Liverpool and sold out that stadium in Columbia, South Carolina.
Bunch of folks have probably never heard of the game.
And they sold it out, from what I understand. Like it was amazing. So, that's happening all over the country. And whether it was those Champions Cup, summer tours or what have you, or now the World Cup coming, you're going to see just more expansion of what we already experience.
Absolutely. And you mentioned, one of the biggest things that we can do to kind of capitalize on that momentum is win, right?
Yeah, always.
They like to be number one.
Of course.
They're used to that, dominance in more of your traditional American sports like baseball, basketball, football. What do you think it is that's holding the U.S. back from a soccer side of things?
There's been, if you look at the countries that have had success in World Cups, the model is definitely changing. It's definitely shifting. You got countries like Morocco now who are doing really well, and on the world stage. And there are small countries that do well. There are large countries that do well. I think with us in the U.S., there are just so many components that go into building the team that's going to help us win, right? You're talking about the coaching staff and who just got hired with Pochettino and what he's brought in now in the last 4 or 5 games. People are starting to believe, right? So you got to get that part right. And then you have to have healthy players who are available during competitions and tournaments, who are getting regular minutes with their clubs. Are they playing in Major League Soccer? Are they playing in Europe? Is there a mix? Of course, it should be all the above. Frankie Haydick, who played, back in the 2002 World Cup, an awesome guy, awesome player. He was on he was doing an interview or a podcast not too long ago, and he talked about the 2002 team, and he was saying, because that's the best team we've ever had, right? Quarterfinal appearance, all that, and he said, were we the best players, pound for pound players against our opponents? No, he goes, but we were the best team. He goes, we were dogs. We grinded, like we came together, we played for each other, like. That aspect we can never lose. Like we never lose that. We have that, and you bring in, what you're seeing now, which is guys who are playing in really good places or getting regular minutes, and then you have a team that can make a run. Now, that's one part. That's like the men's national team, right? Top level. Below that, how do we support that with the youth national teams and with the clubs, all that? Like I think we're in a really, really great place in what we're doing. with our youth setups. Traveling around the world and coaching, our youth national teams against other national teams around the world. We win these games, right? We win these exhibitions and these small tournaments and these select competitions. We haven't won a U17 World Cup, or U20 World Cup. Of course, we've made quarterfinal appearances and all those kind of things, which, up until this last, or actually, I think we have the most consistent quarterfinal appearances of any country in the U20 World Cup cycle, right? In the last, 15 years. So that's pretty impressive. So we're doing, I think, a lot of things that are going to help us win big. It's just a matter of time.
Yeah.
I mean, my son's age group, he's 11 years old, and those kids know soccer. They know players. It's all accessible to them on their phones, right? They go out and train. They do all those things. I mean, it's coming along. Like, I don't think we are. I just think we're in a country that people have choices, man. Not everybody has to play soccer. And I think that's the biggest challenge that we're always going to have, is there's a lot of choices of sports, and kids are going to get pulled different directions. And our best job is to make sure, like, we can cultivate talent as best we can, and bring talent into the sport.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think you hit the nail on the head. The passion is there. The infrastructure has grown, and you're starting to see a lot of our, quote unquote, best athletes choosing soccer over basketball, baseball, football, whatever the other case may be. And I like how you mentioned that ecosystem, stems down from the professional ranks all the way to, the grassroots level. We talk about the college programs, some semi-pro programs. Which leads me to a big announcement that we made here at Edgewater recently, is that the men's and women's team will be competing in USL2.
Fantastic.
Or USLW for the women's team.
Love that.
What is the club getting into with a move like that?
Oh, just more professional, more professionalization of the club. You're going to be able to bring in more talent, right? That's going to draw in a lot more eyes and a lot more a lot more bodies. I know specifically, just with you mentioned that, in terms of the Northwestern players, I'm gonna have players who are gonna jump at the chance to play in USL2 with Edgewater. We're 25 minutes down the street.
Yes, sir.
Right. You hop on the purple line or the red line or whatever, and you're gonna be right there. So at the doorstep. So, I think it's really exciting, and that's a fun league. I go watch that league every summer. Because all the different college players and players who are trying to make it, are in that league, and they're grinding. And it's a fun product. Especially it's regional. It's regional enough that you can still see a lot of the teams that are in and around this, 3 or 4 state area come to town and see who's who and see who's kind of coming through. And then you look up and you go, oh man, I remember that kid. 3 years down the line, you might see that kid, playing for the Fire or playing for whomever. You go, I remember that kid when he played against Edgewater, played against RKC or whatever. Like that. That's always really exciting. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to seeing the product that Edgewater is able to put together. It should be fun.
Yeah, and what do you think creates success in a league like that? How can the club continue to capitalize on momentum and continue to grow at that level?
For me, it's always leadership. Leadership is so important, right? Because leadership is going to allow you to see talent. It's going to allow you to attract talent. Building a product on the field, obviously, from a coaching standpoint, is going to be very important. But within the leadership of the club, having a process, but believing like anything's possible. Don't limit yourselves. Know that if you have desire to build something that has a certain feel to it, and you want the community behind it, then put the work in and bring the community in. And get players from in and around the community. Get players who are going to bleed for the club. Make sure the youth are out there, the youth clubs are out there, and coming in and feeling like, wow, this is a really cool opportunity to meet some professional players and be around it, and I could go play for those guys and have a couple of young players come train with you in the summertime. That could be like early pathway kids, and create a great relationship with the Fire. I mean, there's so many ways to do it, that'll bring excitement to the community.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's one of the first things that I noticed, when I first put on the Edgewater badge, stemming from the top down.
Yeah.
It truly is a community-driven club, and that's something that I feel like is a lost art nowadays. Obviously everybody wants to compete on the field. They want to get wins. They want to sell out stadiums. But in order to do that, you have to, build it from the ground up.
For
and
sure.
I think that, Andrew and the leadership at Edgewater have done a, phenomenal job over the course of the past 6-7 years, to bring that to life. And so I wanted to finish off with some rapid fire questions.
All right, what you got?
You. One match, coaching or playing, that you could experience again. What is it?
one match, coaching or playing. I'm going to go to playing. That I'd love to experience again. So when I first got to Ireland, I'd been there for about a week. I'd been there for about a week, and they said, hey, we got a friendly coming up, and we want to see how you do in the friendly. This will be your first opportunity to play for the club. You've been here for a week training with us. You're here on loan, whatever. I said, okay, great. Who's it against? He said, Manchester United. I said, get out of here. I said, no, Manchester United's coming. I said, they're coming here to this little town, Derry, a little town in Northern Ireland called Derry. So I was like, okay, all right, cool, let's do it. So the stadium held about 10,000 fans, tight, packed. And United shows up, and, it was kind of like a mix of some of their guys who were in the first team, some of the guys who were reserves, but, some of the big boys were out there. And I got out there nervous as heck and warmed up. And I remember I was doing a passing exercise in the warm up, and I let a ball go under my foot and it rolled into the goal, and the crowd was like, ah, and everyone's going crazy. This American, he sucks. Who's this guy? And then I ended up having a blinder. Had a really good game and didn't get scored on. And the goalkeeper who had been the starting goalkeeper in the club came in and finished off the last 15 minutes. And then that's when we gave up a goal and we lost 1-0.
I was going to say, well, United has lost, to smaller teams more recently too.
Yeah,
so we
right.
don't have to get into that for the United fans out there.
Exactly. So I would love to do that. That was amazing. That was so much fun, and that kind of lifted me off at the club from there.
Love it. Who was a player that you looked up to during your playing days in particular?
Oh man, geez, I had several. So. I admired Tim Howard for many years, and I knew Tim. Tim's younger than me; he's a few years younger than I am, but I got a chance to be a teammate with him with the Metro Stars, right? Mm-hmm. And this was before he made his jump. So we were teammates, and then I made my jump over to Ireland, and then a year and a half later or so, he made his jump over to the UK, to United. But just the way he played, I loved it, man. He just had a way about him on the field, and a level of athleticism and style and execution that I loved it because it wasn't as rigid. I'd been taught to be a goalkeeper in some ways that were tough because certain goalkeeper coaches can make you really rigid and think that this is the only way to do it.
Almost formalized.
Yeah, and then and then meeting Timmy, and he was in goal like a basketball player. He didn't care. He was like, man, this is he loved basketball, and he had a way of handling the soccer ball that just looked fluid, and he had an athleticism to him that I was just like, this is crazy. So I admired him. I looked up to him. But I could go through every club that I played for, and there were guys in those locker rooms that were just legit, that were great. But Timmy's one I always appreciated working with him.
How about on the coaching lens? Who would you say is the coach that you learned the most from through your career?
Yeah, I mean it's the first coach I had at that next level was Sasho, at the University of Maryland. And he was more than just a coach. That was the thing. He was the coach that made me believe that I was capable of a lot more than I thought I was. I think that was the biggest part. He showed me things about the game I had never seen before, but really in that environment, he challenged me every day, challenged me off the field in ways, in terms of decision making and behavior. On the field, challenged me mental toughness wise. He was kind of everything at once that we all now have staffs of 5 or 6 to build. He was your mental skills coach. He was your sort of life coach. He was your X's and O's coach. He taught you about how to take care of your body and recovery. I mean, he kind of had it all, and so I learned the most from him early on in that process. And then, as I got into coaching later and got into the national team setup, I've come across some amazing guys. I mean, Jurgen Klinsmann was fantastic. I learned a lot about, sort of the man management side of things at the professional level from him. And, working with Tab Ramos was amazing with the 20s. Yeah. Tab was obviously one of our greatest ever players. And, Tab's level of competitiveness and intensity and his clarity to deliver that to the players, and wrap them in tactics was just, I thought was really special. Tab was phenomenal. And I mean, I could go on and on, but, those are some guys that I really appreciate.
Some great mentors to have. I know that environment that Sasha's created at Ludwig on those Friday nights is special, man. I used to look forward to playing there as a player.
Second to none.
Yeah, another shout out to the DMV. We touched on it a little bit, but I want to see if there's anything else in your mind. One rule change that you could make, either college soccer or at any level. What would it be?
One rule change. That's a good one, man. I don't know, like what's relevant right now. I would say the thing that jams us all up all the time is, especially the college level, but not everybody has just really good clarity with VAR. You know what I mean? Like,
don't even get me started.
First of all, I'm not anti-VAR. I actually love the advent of the video review. I think it's really important. Referees are human beings. Give them more opportunities to make better calls from different angles and all that. But there's always a lack of consistency depending on what venue you're in or what league you're watching and what angle they take up. And like, if there was a way for, like, I don't know, just like an AI driven, like, this is the same standard across the board for VAR. Right. Every game
they
has
used it to make things less subjective,
right?
For things to become more subjective.
Exactly. That would be really helpful.
As an Iranian myself, we were playing against Portugal in 2018 World Cup. Ronaldo almost like throws a elbow at one of our players. They don't even look at it. Anybody else in the world, they're taking a look at that. They're showing a red card, and that's when I first realized, like, hey, this isn't really all it's meant to be.
Yeah.
One piece of advice that you would give your younger self.
Man, there's a lot of things I would tell my younger self. Oh man, yeah, that's interesting. Piece of advice, man. I would say, well, listen, I mentioned it earlier in our conversation. I didn't know the value of being a great teammate back then, and how that would help me, and how that would allow me to be in the position I'm in now as a coach, and have a great network of people that I'm able to work with and have friendships with. And I would tell my younger self, man, like, just keep believing and doing the right things in your environment. So, like, you may save this ball, you may not save this ball, but make sure you continue to leave a good impression on the people you're around. And don't grow weary in that, because there was times I grew weary in it, and you get a little angry or you get a little pissed off, or you wonder, what am I doing here? Like, do these people actually really care? And whether they cared or not, that shouldn't be what drove you or was driving me, in those days. And I think hearing that would be advice that would probably, allow me to keep pushing through.
A wise man once told me, win the moments.
Never gets old, man.
My second favorite quote of yours. I think the hard work quote is number one. I don't know if you want to share that.
Listen, what's the reward for hard work? The opportunity for more hard work is, that one never gets old either. So
last but not least, U.S. men's national team prediction, World Cup 2026. Obviously, the draw hasn't been made yet. We don't know who's in the group.
Yeah. I think we are. I think we have the opportunity. I really think, after watching last night and watching the momentum of the guys in the last 5 games, but more so just seeing how this team has shifted from a group that maybe everybody inside and everybody outside kind of just said, hey, this is the team, and you could just pick the team and you know who it was. I think this team now is one in which there's so much uncertainty on who is going to be on the roster and who the starters are going to be, that it's helping them be way more competitive. Mm-hmm. And as you said, win each moment, value each moment, right? Just keep stacking those little small victories. They keep doing that, man. I mean, this team has got at least a quarterfinal in it, right?
I like it.
And listen, I hate putting like, timestamps, limitations on, like, is it a quarterfinal? Is it a semifinal? Is it a whatever? The stars can align. Like, anything can happen. You can get to a final. Mm-hmm. You can get to a final. I mean, the last World Cup, who was the debutant in the last World Cup semifinal? Was it Morocco?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was Morocco. And look what's happened in that country. I mean, Morocco put us out of the Olympics the year before last when I was there in Paris. And yes, I mean, they had an overage player, Hakimi, who was worth his value was 3 times of our entire team's value. Okay, special star. But nonetheless, you take that that semifinal appearance, at the men's tournament. You take their Olympic appearance into the semifinals. You take their U17 just won the or their U20 just won the World Cup. Like it just takes a spark, man.
Momentum.
It just takes a spark, takes a little momentum, and then you stack these little victories. You stack this, this confidence in your group, and all of a sudden, this commercial entity wants to get more behind it, and all of a sudden, the public eye is turning a little more towards it, and things happen in this country very fast, right? And so, don't be surprised if this summer a couple pieces fall into place, and all of a sudden, the country's behind this team. I mean, if our country gets behind this team, watch out.
It's dangerous.
Watch out.
It's dangerous.
Right?
Absolutely.
And you're a host country, man. Host countries have a tendency to, shake things up a little bit.
Yeah.
So
100%. Well, ladies and gents, thank you guys for bearing with me in Andrew's absence. Coach, appreciate your insights as
Awesome,
always.
Bardia.
Looking forward to seeing you continue building that program up in Evanston. Hopefully you can enjoy some downtime now in the off season, but appreciate you joining us today.
hey, keep doing great things in the community, man.